The Russell Wilson sweepstakes, if that is what you want to call it for some reason, are over. He signed with the Giants, and that is now an all-time quarterback room with Russ, Jameis Winston, and Tommy DeVito. The Giants are in a bit of purgatory right now. You know, the future is bleak, but Brian Daboll got one more season to try and right the ship. The first step is always having a competent quarterback, and that's what I think Russell Wilson is at this point. But how much does he really change things for the Giants this season? Russell Wilson was one of those big shoes left to drop in free agency, and now it's really just time to wait on Aaron Rodgers. Russ to the Giants makes some sense. There was definitely a possibility he could land with the Steelers for another season, but now, I mean, I'd bet that'll be Rodgers. There was the Browns too for Russ, which I do think would have made sense. Deshaun Watson has been probably the biggest mistake in NFL history. Cleveland can't get out of that contract anytime soon, so there needs to be someone to play quarterback that isn't Watson. Wilson could have made sense, but even with how bad the Giants are, most guys would still rather go to the Giants than the Browns. It's only a one-year deal for Russ, but it's worth $21 million with $10.5 million guaranteed. Russ did post on X after the news and said, "Been here before, can't wait to do it again. Hashtag MetLife at Giants." This was in front of MetLife Stadium, of course. That is, of course, a reference to Super Bowl 48 when the Seahawks just beat the crap out of the Broncos 43-8, and he won his lone ring. Can't wait to do it again. Feels optimistic. Hopefully he just means playing there. I don't think they're winning a Super Bowl anytime soon, but hey,
let's ride.
It's been a rocky few seasons for Russ now. He was with the Steelers last year and expected to be the starter, but then suffered a calf injury in training camp, so Justin Fields started early in the season. Russ did eventually take over. He went 6-5 with 16 touchdowns to 5 interceptions while completing 63.7% of his throws. It was an odd situation for Russ. He had gone from Pittsburgh from Denver. The Broncos had signed him to a 5-year, $242.6 million deal after trading for him in a blockbuster trade in 2022. Of course, that didn't go too well in Denver for Russ. Nathaniel Hackett was a disaster in year one as the head coach, but then he got fired, and Russ did improve a lot under Sean Payton. The Broncos still chose to move on and landed Bo Nix in the draft, which has worked out so far. Russ is just a seasoned vet who I think is going to have some good years left. It's not too much of a shock why Russ got signed by the Giants. You know, he's at least going to get to play. I get it for him too. That quarterback room is very interesting with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston together. The real question is, who gets to do the pregame speech? I mean, those are two alphas. The memes and corniness will be at an all-time high thanks to that duo, but how about the play on the field? I'm not betting on much. It should be a good quarterback competition, but I mean, Russ is going to be the starter, especially at a $21 million price tag, even with a ton of incentives packed in. But Jameis is there. He got a 2-year, $8 million deal on Friday. Then Russ got signed on Tuesday. It is definitely a contract for a backup, so it's not a surprise that Russ ended up getting signed soon after. There was already the expectation of another quarterback getting signed by the Giants, and Aaron Rodgers was even rumored there. Jameis is a guy who can start if needed, and that's what he did last season. He started the year as the backup to Deshaun Watson, but once he tore his Achilles in week 7, it was the Jameis show. The offense was immediately better, but with Jameis comes the good and bad. He threw 8 interceptions over 3 games and got benched in week 16. He finished the year with 2,121 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions while completing 61.1% of his passes. Jameis has had quite the career. You know, he was the number 1 pick to the Buccaneers in 2015 and has since played with the Saints and Browns, kind of bounced around. Now he's on to the Giants. Tommy DeVito was the other name in the room. He was undrafted in 2023, ended up playing as a rookie and giving the Giants a bit of a spark. He went 3-3 and threw 8 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. It was a pretty iconic run for him, but it wasn't pretty last season. He went 0-2. He didn't have a touchdown or a pick. He is a backup. There's no confusion there. But nonetheless, he's the clear number 3 behind Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, mainly because there isn't another option. The question is really whether or not it matters who is at quarterback. The Giants were a mess last season, and I know Daniel Jones deserves some crap for his poor play, but I mean, that was kind of an impossible situation, you know? The Giants' offensive line has been bad for a long time now. The Giants have definitely put in some work to try and fix the unit, but it just hasn't worked. Andrew Andrew Thomas is locked up for a while there at left tackle, the most important spot. He was the number 4 pick in 2020. He got a 5-year, $117.5 million extension in 2023. Well, last season, he suffered a Liz Frank injury in week 6 and missed the rest of the year. The bust, known as Evan Neal, has one more year to go with the Giants after he was the number 7 pick in 2022. That obviously hasn't worked out at all. He's only started 7 games each of the last 2 seasons. Center's the other spot the Giants did draft to try and improve. They took John Michael Schmitz in 2023 in the 2nd round. He started 15 games last season. The guards, however, were not drafted by the Giants. There's Greg Van Roten, who was the only Giants player, by the way, last year to not miss a single snap. He got re-signed to a 1-year deal. He's just bounced around his entire career after going undrafted. Then there's John Runyon Jr., who was good with the Packers for a while there. He got a 3-year, $30 million deal from the Giants last offseason. I'd say there were definitely some improvements last season for the Giants on the line, but there is a long way to go. Getting Andrew Thomas back, helps immediately as well. Subjecting Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston to a bad line isn't going to be a huge deal. Russ has dealt probably with worse lines in Seattle, and Jameis is going to Jameis regardless, I think, but there will be a huge issue when a rookie quarterback makes his way to the Big Apple. I don't know who or even when that's going to be. Sure, it's possible it could be this season, with the Giants having the number 3 pick. I don't personally think Shedeur Sanders is the right fit or even worth that pick, but you never know with the premium put on quarterbacks. I think the right call is taking Travis Hunter if they can get him there, but as a Washington fan, I would prefer him not to be in my team's division personally. The good news for the Giants is that if they do draft a rookie quarterback, there is some talent on the roster, specifically on the offense, that's going to help them develop. And by that, I really mean Malik Nabers. I'm all in on the Malik Nabers train. I know there were some other really talented pass catchers as rookies last season, like Brian Thomas Jr., but I'm taking Nabers over all of them. Personally, I still think it's absolute garbage that Marvin Harrison Jr. won the Biletnikoff Award as the top wide receiver in college last year when Nabers and Marv were in their last year of college. Nabers had over 300 more yards. I'd argue he was more valuable to his team and was just the better receiver at that point. That last name always does help, though. I get it. And Marv was fantastic. Even with how messy last year was for the Giants, Nabers still had 1,204 yards and 7 touchdowns on 109 receptions. Now imagine if he can get a good or reliable quarterback to throw him the ball. Behind Nabers, there's Wan'Dale Robinson, a 2022 second rounder. He had 93 receptions for 699 yards and 3 touchdowns last season. There's Darius Slayton, who to me just feels like he's been there for ages now, even though he was drafted in 2019. Just feels like it's been literally forever. He had 39 receptions for 573 yards and 2 touchdowns last season. Tight end is meh right now. Theo Johnson, he was a 4th-round rookie last year, is listed as the starter. He had 29 receptions for 331 yards and a touchdown. At running back, there's another 2024 rookie starting, 5th-rounder Tyrone Tracy Jr., who was really impressive for some stretches last year. He had 192 carries for 839 yards and 5 touchdowns. The offense has some pieces, but it isn't great, and this is almost surely the last chance for Brian Daboll to figure it out if he wants to continue as the head coach of the Giants. And even general manager Joe Shane's time is really ticking fast. I wouldn't be surprised if both are fired at the end of the year. I really don't know how to feel about the Giants right now. I'm usually prone to root for Russell Wilson wherever he goes. He's from Richmond, where I grew up, where I live. He's a local legend, and everyone always cares what he's up to, but obviously the best days are gone for us. However, I think he's been better the last 2 seasons than he's gotten credit for. That one disaster year with the Broncos really did hurt his perception as a player. Unfortunately, he's now just back in a horrible situation with the Giants. It's a sinking ship, and I wouldn't be surprised if things get so bad he gets benched for Jameis Winston just to try to get a spark for the team. The Giants are messy, and until there is a fresh slate with coaching, management, and most importantly, quarterback, I personally don't think anything is going to change.